Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I'm honored to have Pasha Esfandiary with me. Pasha is the CEO of Evoke Capital, and one of the things that you're going to really hear in his story is how he takes calculated risks to get to where he wants to go. I think too many times we hear people talk about take a risk and they forget the calculated part, and I feel like Pasha's done a great job of adding that piece to it. So thanks so much for being on today, my brother.
I'm really excited to be here, man. This is going to be fun.
Yes, sir. So with your story, we would be remiss if we didn't start with the fact that you come from an immigrant family. So when you're 3 years old, your parents decide to come to the United States. So talk a little bit about that and just growing up in an immigrant household and maybe some of the work ethic that's taught having that background.
Yeah, I mean, let's just jump right in there, huh? It's interesting. Growing up as an immigrant and not really knowing English was quite difficult as a child, really, because you don't know how to distinguish if people, at least in my own personal case, where if kids were making fun of me or they weren't, right? Because I didn't understand the language barrier and always having to do extra work or not being understood very well was quite difficult. And I don't know how to acclimate for many, many years, especially in my childhood, right? So when we moved here, my father, I have to give him all the kudos in the world because my father moved here as a single father.
Wow.
My mother stayed back in Iran, and my father, we talk about it, but we rarely talk about it. He was incredibly wealthy. I wouldn't say incredibly, but very, very high end on the echelon scale. However you do, it's all relative, I guess. And he came here dead broke, and we had to live out of my grandmother's house and he had to work odd jobs. And so, you talk about the work ethic. My father did what he had to do to give me and my brother a better life in a country that he had to start all over on, where he's already worked for 40, maybe 45 years already, establishing a life and giving it all up for us. And so, I saw him working day and night. I mean, he was always gone. He had to make ends meet for us. So, and then learning all the things that we did in a cultural background of like what is really important, work ethic, family, all these things that are really ingrained in us, really come back to play later on in my life, in the future. But there was always a lot of ups and downs with my childhood because we were an immigrant family. Yes.
Yeah. Now, once again, I think the interesting idea behind that is there's this great opportunity or perceived opportunity in the United States, right? But I have to give up what's going relatively well already for this kind of unknown. So talk a bit about that and, how that's played out for, your dad and you in your life.
Oh, yeah, that's a tough one, right? Because, if you are, if anyone, it comes from a Persian culture, you're automatically destined to become like one of four things. That's like a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, or, something else, right? And if you don't fail, if you don't make it in any of those, you just have to become a real estate, like the real estate, kind of like the fifth one. And so I always make that joke, which is really funny, but it becomes quite difficult coming up in the world. Sorry, I got totally cuffed. Can you cut that and ask me the question again?
Yep. That's just fine. Oh, you're just fine, brother. Yep. So, as you're growing up and, kind of seeing this transition, right? I think it's perceived that coming to the United States is going to be this great opportunity. At the same token, you're giving up something that is going well, right? So it's giving up what's going well for this unknown, but opportunity of what could be great.
Yeah, I think that's really on my father there, right? To take that such of a risk for his children, right? He really did this for us and the love that was there. There's this one moment that I have to share that always comes up when something like this is when I get the chills thinking about it. I was 18 years old. I had just dropped out of college after one semester. Yeah. My brother just told my father that he wanted to become a poker professional after not going to college. So my dad had to be thinking at that point, like, what the hell did I do? Like, why did I move here? They're both college dropouts and they don't have, anything that I thought that we would do, but we did it. I mean, now we laugh about it. Now we do this. But really, when I think back to or think about what's happening in Iran right now, because we do still have family there is no opportunity. So, I love the United States and the opportunity that's here. A lot of people love to tear down things that are already working or they're not working perfectly.
Yeah.
But man, the opportunity that we have here in America is so absurdly abundant. You just have to work really hard for it.
Yeah.
And so, count your blessings on what you can do. And, when you come from a really harsh background, you can see these things and be like, wow, this is great, compared to a repressive country and where you don't have any rights, which is what Iran is right now, unfortunately.
Yeah. So within your story, you kind of hinted at it. Hey, you're growing up and you eventually do decide to go to college, but you start figuring out college just isn't going, maybe it's not for me. So talk about having that conversation with your dad. I'm sure it was not one that you were looking forward to.
Oh, no, not, are you kidding? No, Phil, opposite. I didn't talk to my dad about it. I just left. Like, there was no way I could tell my father. I didn't want him to be disappointed.
Yeah.
But I knew I hated it. Was excruciating for me. It really was. I just couldn't be in the classroom. I have ADD. I needed to be active. I'm a visual learner that I've learned throughout the years by educating myself and, really having to build what I did. Being in a classroom setting did not work and is not advantageous for myself and my psyche and the way my brain likes to learn. And so I just very quickly knew this wasn't for me. I don't have like a methodical plan of what I was going to do after, but just because of my background, and I don't, we can get into it if you want, but I had such a depressional background in my life growing up. It was very hard for me.
Yeah.
I just realized at some point, like, I will just never do what I don't want to do in life. Wow. Which is such a blessing as well too.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't do it. You only have one life to live. And so I just like, you know what? I'm young, I'll figure it out. And I quit. That's really kind of what happened.
Yes. Now you mentioned, hey, I've got a brother and he was into poker. And so he kind of decides he wants to go that route. And along the way, I believe your brother's older than you, right?
Yes.
So I'm a younger brother as well. And so when you're the younger brother, pretty much everything your older brother does is really cool and you just want to do it, but then you also want to be better than them at it. So talk about what got you into poker or how you kind of started playing.
Yeah. So exactly that. I mean, I'm a waiter at this point. It's around 2004-ish. Yeah. And my brother didn't even tell us that he was playing, or that he won a major tournament. We had no idea that he won 1.4 million. And he just shows up to my dad's doorstep and says, "You're retired." That was his number one goal in life, was retire my father, because he's worked so hard. It was just the biggest kudos to him. And it still gives me chills thinking about it. But I said, okay, well, I'm a waiter making like $80 a night. My brother just won 1.4 million. How hard could it actually be?
Yeah.
So if he could do it, I could do it. And then I slowly started to play the game. And I started to get really hooked into the game because it was so much fun for me. It was a challenging adrenaline rush chess match mentally, but I'm making a little bit of money at this as well too. So I'm like, oh, I kind of get it now. So then I just started playing a little bit more and more and more until it started to supplement my income more than me being a waiter at the time.
Now, not everyone that listens is going to be this avid poker player, or maybe even be a gambler. But I think something that's interesting with it is, if you isolate it, you can really apply it to other things in your life. But playing is a very emotional game, right? You're in the thick of a hand, you think you have it won, and then all of a sudden you lose it, or whatever the situation of the hand is. But it's the ability to have that happen, bounce back, and then play the next hand without focusing on what had just happened, right? And I think that's very similar to life, right? People will have a bad thing happen, and then they'll stay so fixated on it that 4 months later they wake up and they're still focused on the bad thing that happened. They still haven't been able to move on. So for you, talk about it in the context of poker, but hopefully the listener can kind of think of it, in the context of maybe events that have happened in their life.
Sure. In the context of poker, really you have to have Teflon-like skin, right?
Yeah.
Because one of my favorite things when I was playing poker is that if someone is getting tilted, meaning they're not being even keeled and they're playing emotional. What happens when someone's playing emotional, when they're frustrated, already thinking negatively, they're already beating themselves up mentally. You could see it, you could literally see it on their face. They start to lose all of their money. And
Yeah.
so when someone's tilting, you keep attacking that person because you know it's easy money at that point, right?
Right.
But this also applies to life. Like in everything that you do, things are going to happen. It is never going to be in a straight line. Everyone's seen those memes where it's all like curled all over the place.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. But, and this sounds really cliche, but you really have, at least for the way I look at things, let me just talk in my own personal life.
Yeah.
Things will happen. But if I dwell on it, it does nothing different in my life. It literally, it doesn't, right? But you should allow yourself to feel your emotions. If you're sad, feel sad. If you're angry, feel angry, but don't let it carry on. And also give it the proper attention that it deserves, because if you don't give it the proper attention, it will pop up in the next week, 2 weeks, in your relationships, in your work, or how you treat yourself with your dietary restrictions.
Yeah.
So process your emotions, but process them, quicker than later, because it really does makes no difference in your life.
That's really good. Now, as you're growing in the poker realm, there's in this era, there's kind of like the beginning of online poker, right? And then there's also physical in person, tournaments, games, things that are going on.
Yeah.
Are you playing both, or what is this looking like for you?
No, I've always and strictly stuck to cash games.
Okay.
Cash games in the casino, private games, and live in person, because I'm very much more of a intuitive player
Yeah.
than I am the mathematical player.
Yeah.
So playing online, I did enjoy at times. I really did. I did play quite often. You get a lot more hand repetition, but I was definitely more of a live player. I like to read between the lines. I like to have banter. I like to, get a feel for where they're at.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, is there any one game or, night that gave you the confidence that, like, all right, this could actually be something that I do and actually focus on it?
Yeah, I'll tell you exactly what happened. It's a
Yeah.
little bit of a fun backstory, and especially I think goes right with this
Cool.
for this podcast. So there was a moment where I was still wagering, but I was still playing poker. I'm still like kind of on the fence of both. And my roommate at the time, I got him into living to where we're at. It was a bunch of shared rooms in the house. He was a good friend of mine, and he had been borrowing money from me to play online poker. He ended up borrowing about $2,000 from me, but I really trusted him. He was always just a dear friend of mine. I went to go cash in the checks into my bank, and they all bounced. And so that was all the money I had to my name at that time. And so I called my brother and I just said, like, hey, listen, I'm broke. Like, I'm really broke. And my friend stole $2,000 from me. Can I borrow some money? He goes, no, I'll tell you what, I won't let you borrow money, but I need to move my furniture from San Francisco to Las Vegas. Will you go do it? And I'll give you $1,000. Right. And by the way, he got a discount because it was so much crap and so much work and like time off. And like, he just got a steal of a deal. Anyways, I show up to Vegas. I'm there for a week. He goes, what are you going to do? I was like, I don't know. I'll just watch your DVDs, or I'll just hang out in Vegas or go to your pool or whatever. He goes, no, why don't you come play some poker with me, and I'll put you in the game. I said, sure. So this is the, it was a little bit of a bigger game for me. It was a 5-5 game. I'm typically play 1-2. And so he puts me in, I lose all his money real quick, go back to him. And he's like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I'm just going to sit here and watch. He goes, no, I don't want that. So go play your other 1,000 that I gave you. And I said, well, I don't want to lose. He goes, I'll reimburse you. Okay. Long story short, I'm down to my last $100, and I'm like, I'm beating myself up. I'm like, this sucks. Like, why am I here? I played horribly. I was very intimidated by the big Las Vegas casino at this point. And, I turned that $100 into a course of $20,000. I go on the most insane run of my life, and I just keep beating everybody. I keep turning 2-pair, hitting sets, hitting all my straights. I end up winning my way in this during the time of the World Series of Poker, end up winning my seat into the World Series of Poker, end up cashing in the main event, So I literally turned my 100 into $20,000 within a
Yeah.
span of like 2 weeks, almost 2.5 weeks. And I just said,
Well done.
oh, all right, I'm going to quit being a waiter. And then here we go. And then it just kind of started from there.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I got completely lucky. I did not play well whatsoever.
Hey, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, right?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah.
So as you're progressing on, right, you continue to play poker, and at some point ask, I think it's either a friend or a family friend, hey, can I come intern for you for no money, but I want to learn.
Yeah.
Talk about how that came to be and what you were hoping to get out of that.
Yeah. So this was around the time where I knew poker wasn't for me anymore.
Okay.
As much as I loved poker, as much as it afforded me a very like comfortable lifestyle to travel the world. I was younger, 21 to 25. I knew that internally, I knew that I couldn't build what I wanted to build in life by playing poker.
Yeah.
And I couldn't handle the swings emotionally as well as the top poker players were. So I just knew it wasn't for me.
Yep.
So we essentially like a very close family friend of ours. I knew I wanted to get in real estate, and I just said, hey, can I come work for you for free? For me, it's all about education. That's what poker teaches you. You have to learn about how you play. So it instills in you that you have to keep getting better. And so I was like, can I please come intern for you? I'll work for free. I went and interned for 3 months at his business, and he essentially taught me everything he knew about flipping homes, auction sight unseen. And he manicured it. I made meetings with him once a week. And so after about 3 months, he was like, okay, I think you're ready. Go ahead. And I went back to Las Vegas, and it took me a good 6 to 8 months to get the courage to buy my first home. Now that was also because I was very conservative on my first deal. And so finally, when I got it, it was after that one deal, it was, off to the races essentially.
Now, in that first deal, you would love to say, hey, everything went picture perfect. I made exactly the dollar amount that I had projected to make, but it didn't quite go that way, but you did make some money. So talk about that.
Yeah, heck no. I did everything wrong. I did everything wrong. Everything that he taught me went out the window. But everything so, and there were so many things that he didn't teach me, like little minutiae, like some, whatever. There's so many stories of it, but I ended up making like $3,000. I didn't remodel the kitchen like I should have. I scraped off the popcorn ceiling instead of putting money into the kitchen, into the things that sell. But everything that like could go wrong perceived wise, even the people who bought it from me too were representing themselves, and they were the best negotiators still to this day I've ever had. And so I made $3,000 though still, because my numbers were so conservative on my first deal. And I said, this is awesome. Like I still get chills thinking about it. I was like, this is awesome. I was so excited. Told my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, and I'm like, this is my life. Like, and I can't wait. And so then I just started attacking these deals as much as I could. It was great.
Yes. So as our time with poker is coming to an end as a career, I'm sure you still get enjoyment or go play every once in a while, but as a career, it's kind of winding down. Now, a question that I have in the poker realm is this. You said, hey, you're more of an intuitive player versus the mathematical player.
Yeah.
For you, which is harder to play against at the highest level, right? I mean, you played in the big tournament, the main event, and you're playing against the best of the best in the world. Which style is harder for you, being one way versus the other?
I think it really depends on the context, right? Like if you're playing a tournament, it's going to be harder to play somebody who's a lot more on the mathematics side, right? But then again, there's a massive argument for someone who's intuitive, who knows how to pick on and abuse players.
Yeah.
Right. Like if I have a very aggressive player to my left and they're very talented and aggressive, and they know how to like abuse the money that's in there and abuse your patterns, like it's really difficult. But someone, you don't also want a bunch of people who are playing GTO perfect poker in a tournament either. Right.
Yeah.
So, but if you're playing the cash game, it becomes more dangerous easily for the intuitive player at a high level. Right. At low levels where people are playing outside of the mathematics, that don't know the mathematics, those are some of my favorite people to play against. Right. At the high levels, the ones who are intuitive, who know your patterns and know how to readjust, like the Phil Ivies, the Tom Dwans, like my brother, like all of these guys, they don't play mathematically perfect poker ever, really, almost, but they know how to be aggressive and they know how to abuse your patterns.
Yeah, that's good. So as you're transitioning out of poker into real estate, you get that deal done and you end up starting to do some flips, but you also decide to get your real estate license. So that way, hey, there's maybe less fees or, costs that are going to get sold out there.
Yeah. So I actually got my real estate license because I wanted to get the education first, like I always keep talking about. Secondly, I wanted access to MLS, but it just really kind of became a byproduct that I became an agent, right? Because I had my license and I'm naturally always kind of talking about what I'm doing and promoting, whatever. And so they're like, oh, I want to work with you. And so I never really thought I was going to become an agent, but I ended up just going down that route because of my network. And I ended up, all the money that I made from being a broker is what I put into my first investment property, essentially, because I ended up having so much business within the first 6 to 8 months of being an agent. I was like, oh, this is great. It's, I don't have to play poker. I can just use this money to go buy my first flip. And that's what happened.
I love it.
Yeah.
So as I think about that, I think sometimes people are a little bit nervous to step into something that doesn't have a guaranteed paycheck, right? Hey, I'm going out here, and if I don't close any deals, there's really not much money coming to me. Now, you had done a similar thing in going and playing poker, right? No guarantee that we're going to win there. But for a lot of people, they don't want to take that risk, right? Because it is a risk. There is something about it that, hey, if things aren't going well, or for a while I have a dry spell, there's no funds coming in. What would your encouragement be to somebody that's, maybe considering starting their own business, getting into a sales role where there's no guarantee, and just being willing to step into the risk and taking that on?
Yeah, look, I'm going to say two things. One is practical advice, and second thing is a little bit morbid, but here I go. The first one's is what I'm saying is get the education. If you have the education, you know what you're doing, and you can bet on yourself, go do it, right?
Yeah.
The latter part of this is that, you're going to die one day. So I think there's a bigger risk in not doing it. And just to know that you only have really essentially one life to live. And what I do, the way I take risks, is I evaluate how I would feel when I'm on my deathbed. Even though it sounds morbid, it's unlocked a lot for me in my life, because I asked, what would I regret not doing the most?
Yeah.
And if that answer is, hey, I want to know that I lived a great life, then I'm going to go do that thing now. Right. And so as long as I have the foundation, though, in the education, in knowing the pieces of the puzzle, and the confidence in myself to go do it, I'm going to go do it. And it's never going to be easy, but it's worth it to bet on yourself every time.
Boom. Rewind it. Listen to that twice over. That's good knowledge. Now, as you're doing the buying and flipping and rental properties, eventually there becomes a piece of land in California that you decide, hey, I want to buy that. And it's not much today, but I could develop it into something. Talk about how that came about and what intrigued you about that.
Yeah. So there's something that I talk about that people talk about in poker. It's called game selection. What that translates to is that you want to go where the softer games are at, the weaker players, and I'm not great at poker, right? I just had better game selection than others. So I went to the games where I'm a little bit better than other people. And that's what needs to happen. I use that same theory in my real estate business as well. When I moved to LA, I did one flip out here, and I said, wow, I am quite literally a small fish in a massive ocean of endless money. And in Vegas, I was doing well. I could buy homes and buy multiple. Here, I could just do one flip at a time. I was like, wow, this is not scalable. And this is very tough margins, comparatively speaking, to what I'm used to. So in that neighborhood where I did that one flip, there was some land, and I saw people starting to develop, but very, very early on, because what was happening in LA is downtown was booming. And if you understand basic psychology of people who live in LA, no one wants to move south. No one ever wants to move east. West is already overpriced. So north is this area where it's underdeveloped, has great views, and it's underpriced in my opinion because of what's happening in downtown. It's a path of progression.
Yeah.
So I think long-term, I always do think long-term. I said, this area specifically is going to boom in the next 5 years because of everything that's happening or surrounding it.
Yeah.
Its natural path of progression is just going to keep going east. And this is a prime spot. So I bought land there. And as I started getting the plans for that property, I ended up pouring all of my money into buying all the land that I could in this area. And maybe I'm just lucky, but in those years, the appreciation of this area just skyrocketed. So I've been developing in this area for a long time, but it led me because I knew that where there's less competition, more headaches equals more reward. And that's something I've always been just attracted to. And that's what I've always gone after.
Yes. So you're growing your business, it's continuing to develop, and you decide to go to a Tony Robbins event in Fiji.
Yep.
While you're there, you meet somebody who's in the hotel business,
Right.
or at least owned at least one hotel.
Mhm.
And his encouragement to you is you should maybe think about buying a hotel. Talk about that story.
You really did your homework. I love it.
Thanks.
So yeah, it was an interesting story. So I met my partner Jason at this Fiji life and wealth mastery thing, and I'm attracted to people who are always trying to grow and better themselves, and so it's already breeds a good environment for a partnership. He at that seminar and retreat, he asked me, "Do you want to potentially partner up in this motel that I'm going to buy?" And I said, "No, I don't want to know anything about motel. I want to start my getting into multifamily soon." He said, "Okay." So about a year later, I reached out to him because he's a broker in Las Vegas. I said, "Hey, I'm looking for about like a 30 unit apartment complex in Vegas. I want to buy one on my own. And, I know you're a broker. So if you see anything," he goes, "Well, I have this motel that I think is right up your alley." And I said, "I don't want a motel." And he goes, "Okay. But I think you're missing out here. Really, I really do." I was like, "Jason, I'm cool. I don't want this motel." And then the third time he comes back to me, he goes, "Pasha, listen, just come out to Vegas, just see my property and let me show you what I'm doing." And I said, "Fine," because I had some property out there anyways, and I should go and visit anyway. So I said, "Fine, I'll make a trip of it." I go out there. He shows me the details. He shows me what he's pulling in. He shows me everything that he's done at this motel. He shows me that motel. And I just said, "Oh, okay, let's go. No brainer. Let's buy it." And so he convinced me on that trip to do it. And it's worked out wonderfully for us.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So as you've transitioned from, doing the flips to single family rentals, development, one area that you've gotten into is kind of the mobile homes and having real estate there. Off the cuff might sound like an interesting business move, but when you really dig into it, there's a lot of perks to it. Talk about learning that and how you got into that space.
Sure. So again, I leaned on expertise of others for this. I have some, mentors, and I'm part of a large group masterminds. And so I've always heard about mobile home parks. Well, really what the transition for me is this: as I was evaluating more and more apartment complex deals and realizing the cap compression and how hard and how tough it was, and the fact that I became a little fish in a big pond again, it reminded me exactly of when I went to start flipping in Los Angeles. So as my yields were contracting, I didn't really enjoy how much my money was working hard for me in the apartment complex deals that I was trying to find. So I said, there's got to be something better here. So then I started really researching mobile home parks and ended up buying a mobile home park with a partner of mine. And it ended up becoming, that one park, a higher yielding property than all of my apartment complex deals. And I bought my apartment complex deals at a steal, right? Comparatively to the market, an absolute steal. And it was still performing better and gave me less headaches. And so I said, there's stigma here. We were dealing with mom and pop sellers. And I said, again, this is like another, game selection thing here. I'm going to go where there's more headaches, because it is more headaches up front when you get into mobile home parks, but the yields are higher and there's less competition. So let me attack this primarily for the next 5 years at least, And that's what I did. I transitioned everything in the business to go and attack this, just like I did with the developments.
Yes. Getting into a mastermind, I think for a lot of people, one of two things happens. One is you don't want to spend the money as an investment to go to a seminar, grow. Or two, we get to a certain level of ego where it's like, I know what I need to know. I don't really need to surround myself with others. You're one, willing to invest into growing yourself, but two, you're able to humble yourself enough to say, you know what, there's someone out there that's doing it better than me, or they've done it more than me. I can learn from them. What have you gained from being a part of that? And what would be your encouragement be to somebody if they find themselves in camp one or camp two?
Yeah, I've learned so much aspects of this business and everything that I'm doing because of my mastermind, just seeing what others are doing and what they're capable of, and
Yeah.
then asking them the questions. Like a lot of the things that I'm implementing into my business, I'm not reinventing the wheel. It's because I have really good people in these masterminds that are doing the same things. And I just picked their brain.
Mm.
We're talking about VAs, systems, coaches, and we're always helping each other. Plus, I'm surrounded now by a bunch of go-getters, and so who are also doing the same thing that I'm doing in their respective field or apartment complexes or certain regions or self-storage or whatever. But seeing how they're expanding, how they're growing, and what they're capable of makes me just say, oh, well, I could just think about how well we've done in the last 16 months, as a company, because we've done pretty phenomenal. But I know there's others that are doing it. So I like that. I love the drive. I love the juice about it. It's just very inspiring.
Yeah.
Everything I've ever bet on myself and put money into self-education has come back in spades later on. Sometimes you have to invest in the things that don't bring you tangible results up front, but are they going to bring you long-term results? Again, that goes right back to exactly what I was saying before, is that yes, maybe short-term I'm paying a bunch of money, but long-term I'm going to eat that little portion of money up, times 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever.
Yeah. One thing as I hear you say that, so a topic that I would say still struggle with, and I think people that are high performers do, is this idea of what I call blissful dissatisfaction. And so it's the idea that, as you're going through life, a lot of people, when they hit a goal, will plateau because they finally hit that goal, right? If I could just maintain that for the rest of my life, I'll be a happy camper.
Yeah.
Then there's the other person that the second they hit a goal, they already have the next goal created. And so it's like, well, that was sweet. I'll enjoy it for about 8 seconds, but I'm already, like strategizing on to the next one. So for you, how do you kind of walk the fine line of like appreciating and enjoying, hey, I've accomplished so many great things the last 16 months. At the same token, I know I'm capable of more.
Yeah. For me, it becomes a game. I
Yeah.
love to gamify results. I really do. And so I'm driven by my vision of what I want to create in this world.
Yeah.
And so I wish I had like a better answer. I don't really have a balance between it. I mean, there's a funny moment I want to tell you about is when I closed on my first 180 apartment complex on my own. Quite literally 20 minutes after I've closed, I'm on the phone in a hotel room with my wife, and I'm on the phone with the lawyer or a broker actually trying to find another deal. And she literally starts yelling at me. She goes, Pasha, are you literally insane? You just closed the biggest deal of your life and you're already talking about the next deal. Can't you enjoy him? I just smile. I'm like, it's just who your husband is. I'm so sorry. Like, but it becomes fun. I'm always moving the goalposts.
Yeah.
I touching a little bit on my background. When I was depressed and very young, I didn't think I was going to accomplish a lot. So now it's just like I've accomplished everything that I thought I could in a lifetime in a 10-year span or less. And I'm just like, oh, I can create anything. And so now it becomes fun. And it's like, I can't wait to be a father. This is like a thing I journal about. And we're actively looking for a surrogate because she can't have kids, but it's our embryos, long story short.
Yeah.
But I always write in a journal every day. I want to be the model that I want my kids to look up at. I want to be that person. So I want to be able to scale. I want to be able to grow my business. I want to have 10-on-10 relationships with my wife and my kids and my family. And so I'm constantly always pushing myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
There's no
think,
good answer there, but
no,
yeah.
I think one of the things that, is interesting, right, is in my experience, when I set a goal, let's say, just to give a time frame, it's January 1st, right? That's a great goal setting time, right? It's a new year. It's time to switch up life. January 1st, I have a goal for where I want to be on December 31st. And that goal seems crazy because I haven't had that entire year to grow, right? But by the time I get to December 31st, I'm not who I was on January 1st, right? I've had 364 days of growth and learning experiences and new interactions. And so oftentimes when you hit that goal a year later, it's not that it's not cool, but you're not who you were a year ago. So it doesn't seem that audacious anymore, right? Like you've
Right.
been progressing towards it. So it's very normal to say, all right, well, now I want to do something bigger. And it's not because it's ego. Sometimes there's a little ego in that, but it's because you're capable of more, right? Like you've evolved as a human over the last year, and now you're capable of more.
Yeah. Well, you're building a new foundation every time you level up, right? And
Yeah.
then you're making the decisions off that new level of foundation. So you can only naturally keep progressing higher and higher.
I love it.
Yeah.
So in 2021, you decide to kind of create a firm, right, with what you're doing, and opposed to just doing it yourself. Now you've got a firm, what, 950 units. You might be at 1,000 today. I don't want to discount it.
No.
Okay. Well, almost to 1,000. We're working on it actively. But talk about what brought you to the idea that you'd like to, create a firm and grow it that way.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question. At first I was a little nervous to even syndication, like bring syndications and bring equity in and bring in partners, because I've always been pretty much a lone wolf in development. You just kind of do your own thing. And but what happened is that, because I know that this is such a niche, in my opinion, in the next 5 years, mobile home parks, because it's already collapsed. There's a lot of institutional money already flying in, but there's still a lot of great deals out there. And I want to be on the forefront of that. It's going to be something that I know that if I don't do 10 years from now, I'm like, man, all those deals that were way back then, and now they're all pretty much collapsed at this point. And so I said, I need to keep growing. And I was nervous about bringing investor money in, because I'm just so cautious and conservative in general. But what it really has happened is, because we've closed 4, it's been mostly like friends and family on the syndication deals.
Yeah.
I find now that we're sending distribution checks that they're really thankful. So it's kind of giving me more motivation to do more and more. But it just goes along with my overall strategy of this is a time and market where mobile home parks, there's still a lot of good deals out there. They're becoming harder to find. So I've got to attack it, right? And I want to build a business. I love employing others. And this is really fun, because not only this is that I'm also helping a lot of people grow their wealth. And that sounds cliche. A lot of people just say that, but it's true. A lot of my friends haven't invested in deals before. And a lot of my friends don't have a retirement plan. And a lot of my friends haven't actively thought about this. So not only because of what I'm doing here and bringing my friends and family in, and now slowly some outside capital, but the conversations I've had around financial success and financial literacy that happens because of these investments is really kind of a game changer for a lot of people, because we don't talk about that often.
Yep.
Right. Unfortunately enough, we just do not. So it's been a really cool byproduct. But yes, that's what we're doing. I ran out of money. We started, and I wanted to keep doing, because I built the infrastructure to keep attacking mobile home parks, and that's what we're going to keep doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Pasha, any other moments that stick out to you as kind of like who knew moments in your journey on the way to where you've gotten?
There's one moment that I always think about that, that I get chills. And I was 25 years old. I was living in Houston, Texas. I was living with an ex-girlfriend that I hated. She hated me too. And we were living with each other for like 3 months, would barely speak to each other. And I remember just sitting in my room crying. And I turned 25 that day. I was crying, bawling my eyes out. And I said, this sucks. Like, this sucks. I don't have any good friendships. 6 months previous, I realized that all my friends around me were negative influences. All they want to do is party. All they want to do is gamble and poker. And and drink. And I said, this is not really who I want to be. So I actually can't called each one. I said, I can't be friends with you anymore, which was kind of like funny and devastating at the same time. But I was remember 25 crying, essentially dead broke at the time. I said, this is not the life I want to create. I'm 25 years old. I should have done more.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I decided, hey, I'm going to take life seriously. I'm going to start taking myself seriously. I'm going to start building something seriously. And life would have it where, I moved to Las Vegas to be closer to my father and my brother at the time, and give being a professional poker player a better shot inside like casinos and the real way to do it. And then that really led to emotional intelligence work. I did a course out there that changed the complete trajectory of my life. So had I not wanted to do that and taken my life seriously and got to Vegas, then got into this course that I ended up, coaching and being around for 2 years, I wouldn't be who I am today. And so I remember that pivotal moment of the worst low that I've ever felt. Well, not ever felt. One of the recent most lows I've ever felt, to use that as like my fuel and my source to keep going, because I never want to get back to that place.
Man. Pasha, I want to say thanks so much for sharing your story today, brother, and just all the pivotal moments that have led to where you're at. And it's so cool to see all the amazing things you've been able to do and all the amazing things you're going to continue to do. So we'll do a celebratory 1,000th unit. By the time we release this, it might be at 1,000, and then we'll have to do it when you get to 2,000 again.
I can't wait. I look forward. I had a really great time, man. Thank you.